Hello, everyone. Thank you for checking out this special episode of Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
Mark Seifter. I am the director of game design at Roll for Combat, and I was previously the design manager at Paizo and one of the four co-creators of Pathfinder Second Edition.
And today we're going to talk about Battlezoo. There's some new stuff coming out from Battlezoo that I'm excited to talk to Mark about it when I first heard the news. But before we begin about it, let's talk about your previous Kickstarter, the one that dealt with the Battlezoo Ancestry Dragons, the bestiary. There were 4 books in total. What's the status on them right now for those who are curious?
Right. So there's four, like sort of eight, because of the 5th edition versions books in the original Kickstarter. It was going to be 3, but we just kept adding more content without increasing the price. And so it split, one of them like a slime kind of split into 2 books. And so now you're getting 4 books if you signed up for the whole shebang on last Kickstarter. So that includes the Battlezoo Bestiary. That one is completely done in both 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition. It has been for a while. It has all the award-winning monsters from RPG Superstar Contest, plus monster part crafting system, and the Monster Mage, where you defeat monsters to learn their spells, and the Vestige Hunter, where you like win in battles against monsters to learn their special abilities, things like that. And so that's not only completely done, but despite the global shipping crisis that has just caused a huge issue and delays, we finally have been starting getting that one in, the Pathfinder 2nd edition version. That was the one that was done first. So I have my copy of that now, finally. I got it at PaizoCon from the publisher, so you're going to be able to start seeing your hard copy. The PDF's been out for quite a while. The Dragon book is finished in both Pathfinder 2nd edition and 5th edition. The PDFs are available to everyone. And the print copy, I think like the very first publisher copy made it to the publisher to look at, but these delays coming from China are definitely affecting the physical products. Also, of course, in terms of Battlezoo Ancestries Dragons, there's Battlezoo Ancestries Dungeons, which is not part of the Kickstarter, but was our April Fool's product. And it's a real product. It seriously does let you play a dungeon. It's not a joke. And it's free, and that PDF of that is also available in various places for free. In terms of the last book, which became 2 books, that is the Jewel of the Indigo Isles, giant mega adventure path, 3-parter from levels 1 to 11, much longer than you would expect a 3-part adventure path to be from Paizo. And that's not counting that it has the second book. It's long because it has lots of detailed background information for the GM and tips, so that you don't have to do the kind of filling in parts that the publisher and we've run a lot of adventure paths, and we know that with the limited number of page count, there's always some amount of prep work you have to do and extrapolation. So that's kind of been removed, and it's very long, very cool. And then there's the side book, which is called the Jewel of the Indigo Isles Character Guide. Now, that's not to be confused with a player's guide like the ones Paizo puts out for free. We are intending to put one out for free as well, with quite a lot of content in it. But the character guide has like a bunch of new ancestries and heritages, and is more like the Lost Omens character guide, in that it has like a plethora of information, and it's kind of its own, I think, hardcover book with lore and rules and new familiars and some extra pirate archetype feats, things like that. So on our end, the Pathfinder 2nd edition version of everything, I have completed my pass. Now, there is a snag in that, like the cartographer, who is Jared Blando, one of the, in my opinion, one of the most famously known cartographers. Like, I don't know a lot of cartographers, but when he's one of like the 2 cartographers that I used to know before I entered the industry, like when I was just like Mark, the guy who plays a lot of D&D and Pathfinder, the 2 that I knew were him and Rob Lazzaretti. So anyway, he has a lot of Dungeons and Dragons stuff, so like not all of his maps are in yet, but we're getting there on on that, and then that'll go out in PDF as well, but the content is ready. So we're in very good shape on that, and the part of it that is like Steven and me is getting towards the very end.
Wow, that's great news.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of great news, you're working right now on Battlezoo is working on a new Kickstarter coming out at the end of July.
That's
And
right.
again, it's a bunch of things. It's Battlezoo Eldamon, Battlezoo Bestiaries, Strange and Unusual, and Battlezoo Ancestries, Year of Monsters. So
That's right.
let's first talk about Battlezoo Eldamon. This looks very Pokemon, or for myself, Digimon inspired. What can you tell us about this exactly?
So I would say it's probably the most ambitious of the things that we're doing, either from the last Kickstarter or from this Kickstarter. It is certainly inspired by the idea of like finding and training monsters that you'll see in games like Digimon, like Pokemon, like Monster Ranch, or any kind of those games. It does have some differences to Pokemon in particular, although I've heard I was not as much into Digimon as I was into Pokemon as a kid. And I've heard that there are some similarities to unintentional similarities to Digimon in terms of a few of the aspects. But I'll tell you, and you're the Digimon guy here, and you can let me know if that's true. So in the world of Alucard that Battlezoo is set, and also in your world if you want, because it's easy to add them in, there are these beings called Eldamon. They're ancient. They are made up of these elements according to one of the religions in Alucard. I put scare quotes on it because these are not the elements from like the elemental planes that you're used to. There's actually 10 at least, and as many as 20, depending on if we hit all of our stretch goals, which I really hope we do, of these elements that Eldamon can have. And they range from the elements you expect. Of course, there's fire, earth, water, and air, but like some of the ones, especially in the stretch, are like music is one of the elements.
Wow,
So
okay.
there's some very interesting ones there. They have very different kind of strengths, weaknesses, and little like play style variety among the different elements for Eldamon. So the thing about Eldamon that makes them a little different, because all right, you could be like, well, Pokemon are kind of like that, is that we took a step back and said, you know, there have been a lot of people, at least I know a lot of people who tried to homebrew, maybe they didn't even publish it, to put something Pokemon-ish into the game. And whenever they were talking to me about it, one of the big like design challenges that they had was that if the GM wasn't on board and then changing the entire adventure so that you were just constantly fighting these things so that you could beat them and catch them, that didn't kind of work, right? It wasn't easy for one player to just be like, no, I really like this, I want to opt in. So that sort of design inspiration was, and of making it so it was seamless, and even if the GM just wanted to let the player deal with it, that the GM didn't have to add any kind of overhead in order to make it work, was something that was working in the background. And that's where we came up with this idea that's sort of also based on a lot of other legends and media and popular series. You might see it in, for example, like I guess this in the Stormlight archive, there's Spren that like kind of go around and go into things and team up with people as well that are sort of out of phase. So these Eldamon are normally out of phase with reality. They can influence it over time, like a little bit by, you know, if a whole bunch of wood Eldamon come around, it's probably going to increase your harvest. But if they do one of their attacks, they're not going to be able to attack you when they're out of phase. They can like do mock battles with each other that kind of makes them tired, and they do it for fun to play. It doesn't really hurt them. There are people who have learned how to phase them into reality and use them to fight, like against an ogre or something. And those are Eldamon trainers, which are a new class that are going to be in this book. But when they're just sort of hanging around, they love like kind of resting by melding into a creature, an object, or a place that's related to their element a little bit. So if you find a flame tongue sword or you defeat a fire dragon, there's a chance that there was a fire Eldamon that was hanging out there. And if the GM's into it, there are ways that we're going to put in that they could have been like, well, this red dragon actually had a fire Eldamon in it, and it has this one extra move because of that it can do once during the fight. But also, if the GM isn't into it, that doesn't happen all the time. So most of the time, if there's an Eldamon in there, it doesn't necessarily do anything. It's just there because it likes the fire, or it liked the volcano. It was hot. So when you find items and beat monsters and just do the regular thing in the adventure the GM had already planned, we're going to have a table. And the GM can just not use the table and just decide what you get. But we're going to have a table that GMs and players are welcome to roll that tell you, hey, there's a chance there's an Eldamon there. It comes out. And then you can roll to see if it was like one of the more common Eldamon that are in that area, or like a really super rare one. And you could get lucky and be like, yeah, I found like one of the rarest Eldamon at level 1. It was very unlikely. That's sort of my story, is somehow I started out with this really rare Eldamon and people were like, whoa, why do you even have that at this level? So that's sort of how it works. And instead of fighting them, you kind of find them and you have to befriend them by knowing what they like and befriend them in different ways. And then they have their little pet form that they move around in. It's not always a pet because they just hang out this way, but it's kind of cute, like the first evolution for a lot of different monster games. And they can switch into a battle form to fight, or an evolved form if you're a monster trainer and you teach and train with them to evolve. But they can always switch back to their cute form, so you don't have to decide. Like in Pokemon, it's like, well, you know, my Oddish is very cute, but if I don't make it into a Vileplume, then it's not going to be strong enough to fight. And here you don't have to make that decision. And I've heard some of those things I just said are things that Digimon let you do more so than Pokemon.
So it sounds like this book, the Battlezoo Eldamon book, it sounds like it's part Gods and Magic, part bestiary, and then in a small, like a player's guide, so if you could be a trainer. Am I imagining this book correctly?
I think it's less bestiary, but there is a way you could use it for bestiary. I also have not revealed, I've saved one of the things that's in it for later because it wasn't necessary to explain the main concept. So I would say it's mostly going to give you sort of setting info. You could call it a bestiary, but it's not really, because it's not like fighting stats. They're phased out. You can't kill them when with Eldamon normally, but it is at least a list of Eldamon, a lot of information about them. And then it is mainly for players because you can befriend them even if you aren't the Eldamon trainer class. If you're like a barbarian, you're like, I'm a barbarian, and you know what? Yeah, I follow the religion of the Eld. Or you know what? I'm not even in the setting of Battlezoo. I follow whatever I want. I'm a barbarian and I like Eldamon and I want to befriend them, and you can. And if you want to take the multi-class archetype for Eldamon trainer, you can use them to fight an ogre. But normally they won't fight an ogre for you. They can't. They're phased out. But they'll follow you around. You can even collect them all as a barbarian, like just because you feel like it. And then you can fight the ones that your Eldamon trainer friend has and possibly win. But only the Eldamon trainer is like phasing themselves out to phase their monster in and have the monster like defeat a dragon for the party or something like that. So it's a very player focused, but it, like I said, it's got 10 to 20 elements worth of special move sets that the Eldamon can learn. So it would be very easy to use those as a giant mega toolbox for the GM who wants to make a new monster, because you're like, oh, I'm going to make a new monster that's music themed. Well, guess what? There's a bunch of music special abilities that are sitting around here, and I'll throw some of those into the monsters, so that it's very mineable for monsters, but it's not a bestiary on its own. Now, that being said, there is going to be a third RPG Superstar contest that is going to be starting sometime later this year. And that one, which will be for Battlezoo Bestiary, that's after Strange and Unusual, that's after this Kickstarter, is themed after, you guessed it, the 20 Eldamon elements. So
wow,
they don't need, they're not elementals, right? Because they could be like a musical fae or something, but they're a creature that like one of the 20 types of Eldamon would want to hang out with or would want to merge into, because maybe one of them is time-based. Time is one of the 20 elements. So I'd say it's more player-focused. And there's one more player thing I said I would get to it that I haven't told you yet, which is the elemental avatar class. So the Eldamon trainer is befriending Eldamon just like anybody else could, but they can phase themselves out to phase Eldamon in and have them fight their battles. Elemental avatar is somebody who, like, remember I told you an Eldamon could go into like a dragon and most of the time nothing happens, but if the GM wants to, maybe it gets some fire moves. Well, what if that happened to you? An Eldamon went into you, it just hung out there, it liked staying inside of you because of compatibility reasons, and it stayed for so long and was so compatible that you started getting elemental powers from that.
Interesting.
Yourself. Okay. And so the elemental avatar is like, it's an avatar, not just in the sense that, well, okay, right, like someone doing elemental things reminds people of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but also just it's an avatar of that Eldamon, and it's going around. They are less likely to use like charisma to befriend things. They are likely to like use wisdom and meditate, get in touch with the Eldamon inside of themselves, kind of, and learn more how to get in touch with their inner self, and that will allow them to manifest these elemental powers from the Eldamon within them. So that is another class that is in there, and that is basically what you'll find. There's those two classes, 160 to 240 plus, depending on the stretch goals, Eldamon that are in there. That's a lot. Now that includes all three forms. So for example, if you have Lotus Snek, SNEK, there's a little snake that you can befriend, and that's the pet form. But then it goes to Lotus Serpent, which is the battle form, and then Hydranther is like its Hydra-like evolved form. Those are three different ones. Wow. Just like in Pokemon, right? Bulbasaur and Venusaur and Ivysaur would be three different Pokemon. But so it'll have a lot of Eldamon. It'll have two classes. It'll have some lore so that you can understand how we use it in our setting and make it easy to put into any other setting. And of course, like, over guiding rules to help you do things like with tables of finding Eldamon, lots of variant sidebars. We always like to do that in Battlezoo. I think I mentioned in last time I had an interview with you, one of our like key guiding principles is customization, and the idea that like you, the person who has the book, you're part of our design team at Battlezoo. You are going to customize things. We're going to try to make it easy for you to tweak and fit things into your group. And we love modding and house ruling. So we'll put in lots of different sidebars. We're like, hey, you know, the idea that I phased myself out and phased in a snake, couldn't this really thought of almost like as transforming? Is there a way that you could use the Eldamon trainer and almost all the same rules of it, except for that I'm a shapeshifter who can turn into all these creatures? And it's like, you could. You need to make a few adjustments. We'll put a sidebar in that and explain it.
If I'm quiet right now, it's because this is a tremendous amount of information. I'm very impressed. How big is this book? How big do you think this book will be?
We're not sure exactly how big it's going to be, but if I have learned anything from the last Kickstarter, it's always bigger than we think it's going to be. It's always bigger than that, because like, my gosh, the Jewel of the Indigo Isles is going to be massive. And I think Steven initially thought it was going to be like about the length of like Abomination Vaults, right? The compilation Abomination Vaults. That's a 3-part adventure path that got compiled into one thing. Then but it's going to be longer than that, not counting the book that split off from it. So I think whatever we think it is going to be more in the end. And I'm not certain. We're going to write it until we fit everything that we need. And obviously the stretch goals are going to make a huge difference, because a lot of the word count is going to have to go into making sure each element has a lot of special abilities, so that you have choices of which ones to pick. If there's 20 elements versus 10, that section is going to be doubled. So,
wow. And so I noticed that there's also cards as part of this.
That's the Eldamon Battles cards.
Oh, okay.
So this is the thing that we thought about. We're making this for Pathfinder Second Edition and for Fifth Edition D&D, but sometimes you want to do like a duel. Like you want to have your Eldamon, you're the barbarian, you want to fight the Eldamon trainer's Eldamon for some reason, and if you're playing 5e or you're playing PF2, battles take a little while, even if you're pretty quick about it. But we thought it would be cool to have a card-based system that was very much geared towards matching the same, like the names of the special abilities to the elements that exist in the RPG, so that you could be like, oh, well, you know, I have whatever the name of this ability is, like I have this glacier ice attack on my Blizzarder, and I will have my Blizzarder use it in the card game also. So the card game is not fully like 100% yet. I did create a prototype and it worked pretty well. But the basic idea behind it is that you put out your Eldamon against each other one-on-one, and you've got your list of moves, and then you secretly play one of your moves each, and you flip it over to see what they are. They have different speeds, and depending on what your opponent played, you're trying to sort of psychologically figure out what they're going to play and play something that's better against them in order to win. So, for example, I had a fire Eldamon in my sample game that just did so much damage. If all I had to do was just do all of my fire attacks, and I would win. But then I put it up against a mind Eldamon that had like a lot of weird stuff it was doing. And if I just played all of them directly for damage out of my mind attacks, I'd have to go through it twice, all of my abilities. So it would take twice as long. But the mind one managed to win because it had a move that was like not very fast. It was kind of middle speed, and it did like okay damage, not good. But then if it's faster than the opponent's move, it cancels it. And wow. So Linda was facing off against me, and she played the slowest, most powerful possible attack for fire that also forced her to discard another move. So she played that, and I canceled it. And then I used a power that I had that was mind control that let me use one of her discarded cards against her to use that powerful attack against her. So if I had used my medium speed thing against when she was using a fast attack, it would have been almost worthless because she would have been finished already. I wouldn't have canceled it. So you have to think about your opponent's moves and strategize. So there's kind of a psychological element to if I had not been able to guess she was going to play that big strong move correctly, I might have misplayed, and she definitely would have won.
Wow! So this sounds like almost like a game within the game, kind of like maybe not like Gwent in The Witcher. It's that's very fascinating.
You could play it separately if you want. If you just want to do Eldamon battles, you could play it while you're waiting because one of your party members is spending 2 hours buying a hat for some reason with the GM, and then you two are like, let's do an Eldamon battle. It takes like 5 to 10 minutes to do one of these typically. And something that I'm sure fans of both 5e and Pathfinder 2nd Edition will love is that since you can convert any of your characters just by looking at what your moves are and then convert them into the card game, you could see which is better between your Pathfinder 2nd Edition Eldamon trainer and your 5e Eldamon trainer by having them both convert to the card game in battle and see who's stronger between the two of them.
I could see that happening at conventions, yes. How accessible are these items? And like, can my kids learn how to play the cards? Do they have to know Pathfinder to play? What would you say is the accessibility for these?
So the accessibility is actually, and very intentionally, is very easy. In fact, I wouldn't say that it's great at playing the card game, but there is a way that you can do an AI for the card game and play it one-on-one, which is shuffle up the opponent's moves and just play them off the top. Obviously, it's not going to strategize very well since it's randomly playing moves, but it might, if you are like the kind of person who can beat people 90% of the time at rock, paper, scissors by like reading their mind, you might actually do worse against the CPU than a human opponent because you never know what it's going to do. I mean, it's not really a CPU, right? But it does I may need to tweak it to like make sure it doesn't do absolutely outrageously terrible moves, like play the card that does heavy damage, but you have to discard another card as its last card when there's no other card to discard, and so it does nothing. But other than that, it can be done without any thoughts, and you'll probably lose, but you can still put up somewhat of a fight. So if that's the case, then I guarantee that children of most ages, whether they can read the cards or not, can at least flip over one of them against you and put up at least somewhat of a showing. And if they once they get to the point they can read and sort of think about what the cards do, they could easily be choosing them for a better reason than the picture that was on it as well. And the card game is definitely going to be easier because all you do is pick one of the cards. But for the tabletop role-playing game, it's also very much intended that it's good for fans of all ages. So it's not like, it's certainly not made inaccessible for older players. It's got all sorts of depth to it, but it's got a sort of, just like if you've seen any of our other products, we have a lot of a colorful color palette, and it's generally, Steven likes to say it's as family friendly as Pixar, by which he means, well, there's some scary stuff in some of the Pixar movies. Like the first Toy Story has like the torn apart toys in it. And if we do that in one of our adventures, we'll put like a warning for the GM of like, hey, this section is kind of really creepy. So it's meant to be something where it'll be in GM voice and content if it's creepy with the warning, and player content, you're probably not going to have something really weird just pop up if your kids are reading the player books, assuming that the GM is the parent. So it's definitely intended to be something that would be fun and work well with kids and a parent, because I don't know, like a lot of us who love these kind of games are growing up and having families like you were saying, and we want to play with our kids if we can.
Wow, that's amazing. There's two other things you have also coming on the Kickstarter. It's amazing. Eldamon in itself,
Yeah,
it could be a successful Kickstarter on its own. But you have two other books coming out. Let's talk a little bit about the Battlezoo bestiary, Strange and Unusual, which makes me scared because the bestiary that's been put out so far is pretty awesome. So I'm just, what's going on here exactly?
So it is even stranger and more unusual in that we put out another contest and said, okay, you all gave us whatever you wanted last time. It was good. This year we want something stranger. And so that's what we got. And the strangest, most unusual, and best designed monsters won RPG Superstar, and they made it into Battlezoo's Bestiary, Strange and Unusual. Over 150 award-winning monsters, plus more monster parts crafting stuff, because a lot of people, and I knew this was true when I was writing it, when I saw how much space and words I had for it, I knew that like it was good, but that there was a lot of room for expansion if people liked it. A lot of people said, we love this, but we'd like there to be even more. So there will be. Since the first Battlezoo Bestiary had monster crafting, we'll add more monster crafting options and other side options that are related to the monsters too. But the main attraction is the 150 plus award-winning RPG Superstar monsters.
Wow, that's amazing. And the Battlezoo Ancestries Year of Monsters. What does that mean exactly?
So you said it was a third book, but it's actually 12 products.
We mean including the decks or the cards?
The Battlezoo Ancestries Year of Monster is 12 products rather than one book, because that's why it's called Year of Monsters.
Okay.
So the basic idea is, well, I guess we've all been living through 2022. Every month, maybe more often, there's something that I see that makes me a little bit, or more than a little bit, upset. But we thought we wanted 2023 to at least be a year where every month there was something fun, then exciting to look forward to. And that's kind of where we came up with the idea of Battlezoo Ancestries Year of Monsters. So it's 12 new ancestries for Pathfinder 2nd edition. There will be races for D&D as well. And basically what you do is you get it on the Kickstarter, and it comes with Foundry baked in. So you can get the Foundry module, and every month, you'll get a PDF with one of these ancestries. Now, the ones that have been revealed so far are demons, gremlins, dungeons expanded. That's expansion on the free dungeon that we put out already. Intelligent weapons, oni, nymphs, doppelgangers, and minotaurs. There's 4 more that are, at least of the time of this recording plus 1 day, are a secret. And maybe when this comes out, you'll know, you might know one of the other ones, but the others are secrets for now. And we'll tell you all of them by the time the Kickstarter comes out on July 26th. So every month you'll get a PDF of one of these. We're not going to make you pay for shipping 12 times. And do a physical product. That'd be wild. And your module on Foundry that you already downloaded will just get updated to automatically add it without you having to like do a lot of other things. So it'll just add it in for you too. And so, yeah, you'll just have another one each month, another ancestry. That's Battlezoo Ancestry Year of Monsters. And a lot of people were asking for like a final compilation book that is like a hardcover that contains it all plus extra. And I think I may have convinced Steven, our publisher, to do that. So you'll have to check out the final Kickstarter to see if that's in there. But we haven't officially said that it is. And in the past, when we first revealed it, he said that he wasn't doing it yet. So let's say fingers crossed on that. But I'm pretty hopeful about it.
Oh, maybe it could be a stretch goal of sorts, which that leads me to my next question. So this is going to be a Kickstarter at the end of July. What stretch goals do you have in mind so far, if any?
So I would say that the book would definitely not be a stretch goal, because if we do include it, we'd like it to be part of the pledge that you're going to get it. So that's sort of my philosophy on it. Is it should either be in it or not. But we definitely do have stretch goals. I mentioned before, 10 elements are going to be, we have predetermined those are stretch goals, and we've announced that as well in the past. We've also announced that some of those ancestries, like for instance, demons, have a potential to, there's a lot of demons in Pathfinder. So we always do ancestries longer than the standard Paizo ancestry length, which is like 4 pages in the core rulebook or like 6 pages elsewhere for the most part. Ours tend to be 10 at Roll for Combat ish, 10-ish, maybe 8 if we were lightish on art. But generally 10, sometimes longer. The free dungeon is longer than 10. So we're willing though to make some of these ancestries super length or super duper sized if we hit enough stretch goals. And Demon is one that could go super duper size. That's still not going to be as long as the Dragon book. Let's not get carried away. That one is huge. But the Demon could go from, let's say, 10, like this is ballpark, but like if 10 is our average, a super sized one, which several of them could get, might be 20 perhaps. And maybe Demon, if it got super duper sized by 2 stretch goals, could be 40, for example. So the more stretch goals we hit, the bigger these ancestries will be, and the more bonus content they'll get potentially, and we'll see how that goes. So one way that what you were talking about with a final compilation could work well on a stretch goal is suppose that for workflow reasons, like the shorter versions, we just did like the standard version without the stretch goals or something like that during the year, and then the compilation final book could be a place to put all of the extra expansions and things that have been added from the stretch goal, like in the final, that everybody gets. So that's sort of something I'm hoping for if we have a compilation. It'll be a PDF or a hardcover if it comes out, would be another option that people could get.
Wow. This is a very impressive Kickstarter, I may say. So much great things in it. Almost like
there's other stuff that I haven't said, but because we haven't revealed it yet. So we have a few tricks up our sleeve for the Kickstarter as well, but I would call them more tricks up our sleeve than like, we're not like hiding another giant book that we're just not telling anyone about. They're more like tricks up our sleeve than like a secret ace product.
Okay, so definitely viewers, you should definitely keep checking the Kickstarter till it goes live to see some of the extras they're going to be putting out there.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
right.
there's
Oh,
already a page that you can go to that's like this is an upcoming product page, and you can click to notify you on launch.
mm. Oh, excellent. Yeah, I will put the links in the description below. Again, this is wow. I'm not too many times where I interview someone, they explain the product, and I'm just wowed by the amount of stuff that's coming in with this. All right, excellent. Well, again, this will be out at the end of July. I'll have the links to the bottom below that we just discussed in the interview. Again, Mark, thank you so much for the interview. And to our viewers out there, stay tuned for more news. We'll talk to you soon.